Hello friends, and welcome to tonight's edition of Sleep Stories. I shall be reading for you a collection of a few bedtime stories to help you unwind and drift off to sleep. If you enjoy these readings, I would encourage you to subscribe and click the like button so you will be notified of upcoming sleep stories. I thank you for your support. Before we begin the narration, let us unwind. Find yourself a place where you can relax. Your chair, your sofa, or maybe your bed. Make yourself comfortable. After you have settled in, take a deep breath. The day has come to an end. All that is left for you to do now is to listen to these stories and fall asleep. And so, let us begin. Mr. Fox cuts the cottontails. Mr. Fox decided that the only way to get all the wood animals to have a good opinion of him was to give a big dinner, for he had somehow got rather a bad name among the animals for being so tricky. So, all day long he went about telling all the animals that when it was dark, quite dark, they were to come to his house and dine. There were the squirrels, and the coons, the possums, and the bear family, and all the rabbit family, including Susie Cottontail, and her brother Jimmy, and many others. They may be sure that no one ate any dinner that day. They all saved their appetites for Mr. Fox's nighttime feast. For, as Mr. Coon expressed it, we should be very ungrateful to Mr. Fox if we did not take to his dinner our very best appetites. Therefore, our stomachs should be empty. As soon as it was dark, so that Mr. Dog could not see them, all the animals began to slowly creep toward Mr. Fox's home. Mr. Fox let them in one by one, and was careful to draw all the shades and stuff the keyhole so the light would not show outside, if anything happened that Mr. Dog should be roaming through the woods. At last, all the animals but Jimmy and Susie Cottontail were there, and everyone began to wonder where they could be and what kept them so late. It happened that Jimmy and Susie Cottontail were not at all sure they would enjoy Mr. Fox's dinner, and they had run over to the farm on the hill to have a dinner of some garden stuff of which they were fond. They had stayed longer than they had intended, and when they started for Mr. Fox's house, were not as cautious as they usually were about throwing Mr. Dog off their track. Just as they were entering the wood, who should come bounding after them but Mr. Dog, who had followed them from the farm, and off ran Jimmy and Susie Cottontail, looking for a hole in which to hide. Mr. Fox's house was the first refuge they came to, and in the door they burst, with Mr. Dog at their heels. Of course, there was no dinner, and the party was spoiled, for everybody ran, and Mr. Dog, not knowing which one to chase when he saw so many, went home without having caught anyone. The next day, Mr. Fox was talking with his friend, Mr. Coon. No one of the animals would have gotten us into such a fix but those cottontails, he said. In the first place, their ears are so short, they never heard quickly like some others of that family. And then those tails, why, they can be seen for yards and yards. I should have known better than to ask them. And everyone knows they have no sense. The cottontails run into the first opening they see, and never keep on running as their cousins do. I have had my lesson. I shall cut them off my visiting list from now on. And that is the reason the cottontail family are never invited to any dinner that the woodfolk give. Their trails can be too easily followed by Mr. Dog. Little Never Upset. Little Never Upset was a roly-poly fellow, with weights in his little body so placed that no matter how he was treated or tumbled about, he always bobbed up smiling. His face was a jolly little round one, with a smile that could not be rubbed off. And no matter how the other toys fussed or disputed among themselves, Little Never Upset did not take a part. One night, when the clock struck the midnight hour, Miss French Doll and Miss Calico Doll began to fuss. "They treated me very badly," said Miss Calico Doll. "When we were in the carriage, riding in the park, one would have thought we did not live in the same playroom." "Why do you not have something to wear besides that old calico dress?" asked Miss French Doll. "I never was so disgraced as when we met Miss Marie Doll in her beautiful clothes. I am sure she wondered who you were." "Anyone would think you never had a broken arm and had to go to the hospital," replied Miss Calico Doll. "You were a sorry-looking sight without your hand and part of your arm. But I did not feel ashamed of you when we sat in our chairs on the front porch." "That is a very different thing," said Miss French Doll with a toss of her head. "I could not help having an accident." "I cannot help wearing this calico dress," said Miss Calico Doll. "It is painted on me just like my face." "My goodness!" exclaimed Jack-in-a-Box, jumping up with a spring. "Whatever is all the trouble? And Buddy cannot get an extra wink for you two fussing." "Bow wow wow," barked Little Dog on Wheels. "Why don't you scare Buddy right out of his skin, Jack? I was asleep, right beside your box." Teddy Bear began to growl. "Anyone would think this was a menagerie instead of a playroom," he said. "Yes, they would," said Calico Cat, with a spiteful twist of her tail. "Your growl helps me to make it real." Calico Cat humped her back, ready to spring at Teddy if he answered, and Little Dog on Wheels barked, ready to jump at anyone who gave him the least cause. Jack-in-a-Box quivered on his spring with anger, because French Doll told him he had no legs, and he better kept quiet, while Miss Calico Doll tried to think of something spiteful to say to Miss French Doll. It was this very moment that Little Never Upset, who was listening to all the fussing from the shelf where he was sitting, set a good example to the playroom toys. "Get off my shelf," said Old Elephant, who always stood there and thought he owned it. And as he spoke, he gave Little Never Upset a bang with his trunk, and over he went on the floor, right on his head. All the toys stopped fussing to watch. and quick as a flash-up jumped Little Never Upset on his feet and rolled from side to side with laughter. "You are the best-natured fellow I ever saw," said Teddy Bear. "Don't you feel like paying Elephant back for doing that?" "Not a bit," answered Little Never Upset. "Life is too short to quarrel. Think of all the fun you lose taking time to wrangle." "You are right," said Teddy Bear. "What was all the fuss about anyway?" No one could say just what began it, and in a few minutes everybody was laughing and having a good time, and all because Little Never Upset had bobbed up smiling. Old Elephant took time, however, to lean over the shelf and call to Little Never Upset. "Say, old fellow, I am sorry I was so rude. Come up again and stay as long as you like." And Little Never Upset nodded his head and said he would, smiling as if he never had been tumbled off the shelf. The Golden Lads. A poor man and his wife lived in a little cottage, where they supported themselves by catching fish in the nearest river, and got on as best as they could, living from hand to mouth. One day it happened that when the fisherman drew in his net, he found in it a remarkable fish, for it was entirely of gold. As he was inspecting it with some surprise, the fish opened its mouth and said, "Listen to me, fisher. If you will just throw me back into the water, I'll turn your poor little cottage into a splendid castle." The fisher replied, "What good, pray, will a castle be to me, if I have nothing to eat in it?" "Oh," said the goldfish, "I'll take care of that. There will be a cupboard in the castle, in which you will find dishes of every kind of food you can wish for most." "If that's the case," said the man, "I've no objection to oblige you." "Yes," observed the fish, "but there is one condition attached to my offer, and that is that you are not to reveal to a soul where your good fortune comes from. If you say a word about it, it will all vanish." The man threw the fish back into the water and went home, but on the spot where his cottage used to stand, he found a spacious castle. He opened his eyes wide, went in and found his wife, dressed out in smart clothes, sitting in a splendidly furnished drawing-room. She was in high spirits and cried out, "Oh, husband, how can this all have happened? I am so pleased." "Yes," said her husband, "so am I pleased, but I am uncommonly hungry, and I want something to eat at once." Said his wife, "I've got nothing, and I don't know where anything is in this new house." "Never mind," replied the man, "I see a big cupboard there. Suppose you unlock it." When the cupboard was opened, they found meat, cakes, fruit, and wine, all spread out in the most tempting fashions. The wife clapped her hands with joy and cried, "Dear heart, what more can one wish for?" And they sat down and ate and drank. When they had finished, the wife asked, "But husband, where do all these riches come from?" "Ah," said he, "don't ask me. I dare not tell you. If I reveal the secret to anyone, it will be all up with us." "Very well," she replied. "If I am not to be told, of course I don't want to know anything about it." But she was not really in earnest, for her curiosity never left her a moment's peace by day or night, and she teased and worried her husband to such a pitch that at length he quite lost patience and blurted out that it all came from a wonderful golden fish, which he had caught and set free again. Hardly were the words well out of his mouth, when castle, cupboard, and all vanished. And there they were sitting in their poor little fishing hut once more. The man had to betake himself to the former trade, and set to fishing again. As luck would have it, he caught the golden fish a second time. "Now listen," said the fish. "If you'll throw me back into the water, I'll give you back the castle and the cupboard with all its good things. But now take care, and don't, for your life, betray where you got them, or you'll just lose them again." "I'll be very careful," promised the fisher, and threw the fish back into the water. When he went home, he found all the former splendor restored, and his wife overjoyed at their good fortune. But the curiosity still continued to torment her, and after restraining it with a great effort for a couple of days, she began questioning her husband again as to what happened and how he had managed. The man kept silent for some time, but at last she irritated him so much that he burst out with the secret, and in one moment the castle was gone, and they sat once more in their wretched old hut. "There," exclaimed the man, "you would have it. Now we may just go on short comments." "Ah," said the wife, "after all, I'd rather not have all the riches in the world. If I don't know where they come from, I shall not have a moment's peace." The man took to his fishing again, and one day fate brought the golden fish into his net for a third time. "Well," said the fish, "I see that I am evidently destined to fall into your hands. Now take me home and cut me into 6 pieces. Give 2 bits to your wife to eat, 2 to your horse, and plant the remaining 2 in your garden, and they will bring you a blessing." The man carried the fish home and did exactly as he had been told. After a time it came to pass that from the 2 pieces he had planted in the garden, 2 golden lilies grew up, and that his horse had 2 golden foals, whilst his wife gave birth to twin boys who were all golden. The children grew up both tall and handsome, and the foals and the lilies grew with them. One day the children came to their father and said, "Father, we want to mount on golden steeds and ride forth to see the world." The father answered sadly, "How can I bear it, if, when you are far away, I know nothing about you?" And they said, "The golden lilies will tell you all about us if you look at them. If they seem to droop, you will know we are ill, and if they fall down and fade away, it will be a sign we are dead." So off they rode, and came to an inn where were a number of people who, as soon as they saw the 2 golden lads, began to laugh and cheered them. When one of them heard this, his heart failed him, and he thought he would go no further into the world. So he turned back and rode home to his father. But his brother rode on till he reached the outskirts of a huge forest. Here he was told, "It will never do for you to ride through the forest. It is full of robbers, and you're sure to come to grief, especially when they see that you and your horse are golden. They will certainly fall on you and kill you." However, he was not to be intimidated, but said, "I must and will ride on." So he procured some bearskins and covered himself and his horse with them, so that not a particle of gold could be seen, and then rode bravely into the heart of the forest. When he had got some way, he heard a rustling through the bushes, and presently a sound of voices. Someone whispered on one side to him, "There goes someone," and was answered from the other side, "Oh, let him pass. He's only a bear-keeper, and as poor as any church mouse." So Golden Lad rode through the forest, and no harm befell him. One day he came to a village where he saw a girl who struck him as being the loveliest creature in the whole world. And as he felt a great love for her, he went up to her and said, "I love you with all my heart. Will you be my wife?" And the girl liked him so much that she put her hand in his and replied, "Yes, I will be your wife, and will be true to you as long as I live." So they were married, and in the middle of all the festivities and rejoicing, the bride's father came home, and was not a little surprised at finding his daughter celebrating her wedding. He inquired, "And who is the bridegroom?" Then someone pointed out to him the Golden Lad, who was still wrapped up in the bearskin, and the father exclaimed angrily, "Never shall a mere bear-keeper have my daughter," and tried to rush at him and kill him. But the bride did all she could to pacify him, and begged hard, saying, "After all, he is my husband, and I love him with all my heart," so that at length he gave in. However, he could not dismiss the thought from his mind, and next morning he rose very early, for he felt he must go and look at his daughter's husband, and see whether he really was nothing better than a mere ragged beggar. So he went to his son-in-law's room, and who should he see lying in bed but a splendid golden man, and the rough bearskin thrown on the ground close by. Then he slipped quietly away and thought to himself, "How lucky that I managed to control my rage. I should certainly have committed a great crime." Meantime, the Golden Lad dreamt that he was out hunting, and was giving chase to a noble stag. And when he woke, he said to his bride, "I must go off and hunt." She felt very anxious, and begged he would stay at home, adding, "Some mishap might so easily befall you." But he answered, "I must and will go." So he went off into the forest, and before long a fine stag, such as he had seen in his dream, stopped just in front of him. He took aim, and was about to fire, when the stag bounded away. Then he started off in pursuit, making his way through the bushes and briars, and never stopped all day. But in the evening the stag entirely disappeared, and when Golden Lad came to look about him, he found himself just opposite a hut in which lived a witch. He knocked at the door, which was opened by a little old woman who asked, "What do you want at this late hour in the midst of this great forest?" He said, "Haven't you seen a stag about here?" "Yes," said she, "I know the stag well." And as she spoke, a little dog ran out of the house and began barking and snapping at the stranger. "Be quiet, you little toad," he cried, "or I'll shoot you dead." Then the witch flew into a great rage and screamed out, "What? You'll kill my dog, will you?" And the next moment he was turned to stone and lay there immovable, whilst his bride waited for him in vain, and thought to herself, "Alas, No doubt the evil I feared, and which has made my heart so heavy, has befallen him." Meantime the other brother was standing near the golden lilies at home, when suddenly one of them bent over and fell to the ground. "Good heavens!" cried he, "some great misfortune has befallen my brother. I must set off at once. Perhaps I may still be in time to save him." His father entreated him, "Stay at home. If I should lose you too, what would become of me?" But his son replied, "I must and will go." Then he mounted his golden horse and rode off till he reached the forest, where his brother lay transformed to stone. The old witch came out of her house and called to him, for she would gladly have cast her spells on him too, but he took care not to go near her, and called out, "Restore my brother to life at once, or I shall shoot you down on the spot." Reluctantly she touched the stone with her finger, and in a moment it resumed its human shape. The two golden lads fell into each other's arms and kissed each other with joy, and then rode off together to the edge of the forest, where they parted, one to return to his old father, and the other to his bride. When the former got home, his father said, "I knew you had delivered your brother," for all of a sudden the golden lily reared itself up and burst into blossom. Then they all lived happily to their lives' ends, and all things went well with them. The Story of a Clever Tailor. Once upon a time there lived an exceedingly proud princess. If any suitor for her hand ventured to present himself, she would give him some riddle or conundrum to guess, and if he failed to do so, he was hunted out of town with scorn and derision. She gave out publicly that all corners were welcome to try their skill, and that whoever could solve a riddle should be her husband. Now it happened that 3 tailors had met together, and the 2 elder thought that after having successfully put in so many fine and strong stitches, with never a wrong one amongst them, they were certain to do the right thing here too. The 3rd tailor was a lazy young scamp, who did not even know his own trade properly, but who thought that surely luck would stand by him now just for once, for, if not, what was to become of him? The 2 others said to him, "You just stay at home. You'll never get on much with your small allowance of brains." But the little tailor was not to be daunted, and said he had set his mind on it, and meant to shift for it himself. So off he started as though the whole world belonged to him. The 3 tailors arrived at court, where they had themselves duly presented to the princess, and begged she would propound her riddles. "For," said they, "here were the right men at last, with wits so sharp and so fine you might almost thread a needle with them." "Then," said the princess, "I have on my head 2 different kinds of hair. Of what colors are they?" "If that's all," said the first tailor, "they are most likely black and white, like the kind of cloth we all call pepper and salt." "Wrong," said the princess. "Then," said the second tailor, "if they are not black and white, no doubt they are red and brown, like my father's Sunday coat." "Wrong again," said the princess. "Now let the third speak. I see he thinks he knows all about it." Then the young tailor stepped boldly to the front and said, "The princess has 1 silver and 1 golden hair on her head, and those are the 2 colors." When the princess heard this, she turned quite pale, and almost fainted away with fear, for the little tailor had hit the mark, and she had firmly believed that not a soul could guess it. When she had recovered herself, she said, "Don't fancy you have won me yet. There is something else you must do first. Below, in the stable, is a bear with whom you must spend the night. And if, when I get up in the morning, I find you still alive, you shall marry me." She quite expected to rid herself of the tailor in this way, for the bear had never left anyone alive who had once come within reach of his claws. The tailor, however, had no notion of being scared, but said cheerily, "Bravely dared is half won." When evening came on, he was taken to the stable. The bear tried to get at him at once, and to give him a warm welcome with his great paws. "Gently, gently," said the tailor. "I'll soon teach you to be quiet." And he coolly drew a handful of walnuts from his pocket and began cracking and eating them as though he had not a care or anxiety in the world. When the bear saw this, he began to long for some nuts himself. The tailor dived into his pocket and gave him a handful, but they were pebbles, not nuts. The bear thrust them into his mouth, but try as he might, he could not manage to crack them. "Dear me," thought he, "what a stupid fool I must be, can't even crack a nut." And he said to the tailor, "I say, crack my nuts for me, will you?" "You're a nice sort of fellow," said the tailor. "The idea of having those great jaws and not being able even to crack a walnut." So he took the stone, quickly changed it for a nut, and crack! It split open in a moment. "Let me try again," said the bear. "When I see the thing done, it looks so easy I fancy I must be able to manage it myself." So the tailor gave him some more pebbles, and the bear bit and gnawed away as hard as he could. But I need hardly say that he did not succeed in cracking one of them. Presently the tailor took out a little fiddle and began playing on it. When the bear heard the music, he could not help dancing, and after he had danced some time, he was so pleased that he said to the tailor, "I say, is fiddling difficult?" "Mere child's play," replied the tailor. "Look here, you press the strings with the fingers of the left hand, and with the right you draw the bow across them. So. Then it goes as easily as possible. Up and down, tra-la, la, la, la." "Oh," cried the bear, "I do wish I could play like that. Then I could dance whenever the fancy took me. What do you think? Would you give me some lessons?" "With all my heart," said the tailor, "if you are sharp about it. But just let me look at your paws. Dear me, your nails are terribly long. I must really cut them first." Then he fetched a pair of stocks, and the bear laid his paws on them, and the tailor screwed them up tight. "Now just wait whilst I fetch my scissors," said he, and he left the bear growling away to his heart's content, whilst he lay down in a corner and fell fast asleep. When the princess heard the bear growling so loud that night, she made sure he was roaring with delight, as he worried the tailor. Next morning she rose feeling quite cheerful and free from care, but when she looked across towards the stables, there stood the tailor in front of the door, looking as fresh and lively as a fish in the water. After this, it was impossible to break the promise she had made so publicly. So the king ordered out the stagecoach to take her and the tailor to church to be married. As they were starting, the two bad-hearted other tailors, who were envious of the younger one's happiness, went to the stable and unscrewed the bear. Off he tore after the carriage, foaming with rage. The princess heard his puffing and roaring, and growing frightened, she cried, "Oh dear, the bear is after us, and will certainly catch us up." The tailor remained quite unmoved. He quietly stood on his head, stuck his legs out at the carriage window, and called out to the bear, "Do you see my stocks? If you don't go home this minute, I'll screw you tight into them." When the bear saw and heard this, he turned right round and ran off as fast as his legs would carry him. The tailor drove on unmolested to church, where he and the princess were married, and he lived with her many years, happy and merry as a lark.